The desert wind whipped Penelope's elegant gown around her ankles as she surveyed the opulent ballroom. Diamonds glittered at her throat, reflecting the chandelier light as she offered a gracious smile to the mayor. "Another generous donation to the church. Mrs. Graves?" he boomed, his voice thick with admiration. Penelope chuckled, a melodious sound that masked the steel in her heart. "Of course, Mayor Thompson. Charity is a virtue, wouldn't you agree?" Hours later, under the cloak of a moonless night, that same steel shone in her eyes. A black bandana hid the lower half of her face, her elegant gown replaced by practical leather breeches and a dark shirt. "All right, let's move," she barked, her voice roughened and commanding. The masked bandits of the Rattlesnake Gang followed her lead, their horses thundering towards the unsuspecting train rumbling through the darkness between El Paso and Kansas. With practiced ease, Penelope, now the notorious Viper, scaled the train car, her agility belying her socialite persona. A gunshot shattered the night as the gang swarmed the train, their mission, the strongbox containing the bank's payroll. Penelope moved like a shadow, disarming guards and securing the loot with ruthless efficiency. By dawn, Penelope was back in her silken sheets, a faint trace of gunpowder the only evidence of her nocturnal adventures. Penelope's reputation preceded her. Invitations to her soirees were the most coveted in the state. Governors, senators, and even the occasional European dignitary graced her dance floor. The sheer extravagance was legendary. Imported champagne flowed like water. The finest musicians played late into the night, and the flower arrangements alone cost more than most families earned in a year. Her donations to the local churches were equally impressive. Each Sunday, she sat in the front pew, her head bowed in prayer, a picture of pious devotion. The stained glass windows, recently renovated, were a gift from Mrs. Graves, as was the new organ. The townsfolk saw her as a saint, a pillar of the community. And then there were the diamonds. They were as much a part of Penelope as her perfectly coiffed hair and her dazzling smile. Necklaces, earrings, bracelets, rings. Each piece sparkled with an almost unnatural brilliance. Rumor had it that they were family heirlooms, passed down through generations. Nobody questioned their authenticity or where the Graves family fortune truly came from. Arthur, her husband, simply basked in her reflected glory, oblivious to the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of his beloved wife. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels was almost hypnotic, but the Rattlesnake Gang was anything but relaxed. They rode hard alongside the iron horse, the wind screaming past their masked faces. Inside the train, unsuspecting passengers dozed or played cards, oblivious to the danger that hurtled towards them. Viper signaled, a sharp whistle cutting through the night. The gang spurred their horses, closing the distance. Jake, the explosives expert, carefully placed charges on the track ahead, while Maria, the sharpshooter, took position on a nearby ridge. The explosion ripped through the night, derailing the train with a deafening roar. Chaos erupted. Passengers screamed, guards scrambled for their weapons, and the Rattlesnake Gang descended. Viper, a whirlwind of fury and precision, led the charge. She moved through the chaos like a phantom, disarming guards and barking orders. "The strongbox. Now," she commanded, her voice a gravelly rasp. Two burly bandits wrestled the heavy strongbox from the wreckage, their muscles straining. In mere minutes, the gang vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a scene of destruction and despair. The train robbery was a success. Again, and the legend of the Viper grew. Dust swirled around Jebediah Stone's worn boots as he stepped off the stagecoach in Harmony Gulch. He was a man carved from granite, his face etched with the harsh realities of the West. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned the dusty street, taking in every detail. He carried little more than a rifle, a saddlebag, and an unshakable determination. Jebediah wasn't interested in the saloons or the card games. He was here for one reason, the Viper. He had been tracking her for months, piecing together fragments of information, following the trail of stolen gold and shattered lives. And now he had proof. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a wanted poster. It depicted a crude drawing of a masked bandit, but it was the accompanying item that was truly damning. A diamond earring, identical to the ones Penelope Graves was known to wear. He had recovered it from the scene of the last train robbery, snagged on a piece of torn fabric. It was the final piece of the puzzle. Jebediah Stone knew exactly who the Viper was, and he was about to bring her reign of terror to an end. He adjusted his hat and began to walk towards the town's most lavish building, the Graves Mansion. Arthur Graves, a man of leisure and little else, was enjoying a glass of brandy in his study when Jebediah Stone was ushered in by a nervous maid. Arthur raised an eyebrow, taking in the bounty hunter's rough appearance. "Mr. Stone, I presume? To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" Jebediah wasted no time. He placed the wanted poster on Arthur's desk, the crude drawing of the masked bandit staring up at him. "I'm looking for the Viper, Mr. Graves, and I believe your wife can help me find her." Arthur chuckled, a dismissive sound. "My wife? Penelope? Absurd. She's a pillar of this community, a paragon of virtue." He picked up the poster, scoffing. This is ridiculous." Jebediah remained impassive. He then produced the diamond earring, placing it beside the poster. "Found at the scene of the last robbery. Recognize it, Mr. Graves?" Arthur's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his face. He picked up the earring, examining it closely. It was undeniably similar to Penelope's. "Coincidence," he declared, his voice wavering slightly. "Many women wear diamonds, Mr. Stone. I suggest you leave before I call the sheriff." But the seed of doubt had been planted. After Jebediah left, Arthur found himself unable to shake off the encounter. He tried to focus on his brandy, but the image of the diamond earring kept flashing in his mind. He remembered Penelope wearing those earrings just last week at the governor's ball. He also recalled her claiming to be visiting her ailing Aunt Mildred the night of the last train robbery. Aunt Mildred had passed away 5 years ago. He started to recall other inconsistencies, small things he had previously dismissed as quirks or oversights. Her late-night rides, her unexplained absences, the strange men who occasionally visited her in secret. Could it be possible? Could his Penelope, the woman he adored, be a ruthless bandit? He decided to do some investigating of his own. He started subtly questioning the staff, asking about Penelope's activities when he wasn't around. He visited the local mercantile, inquiring about large purchases of black bandanas and leather goods. The answers he received were unsettling, painting a picture of a woman he didn't recognize. The seed of doubt had taken root, and it was growing rapidly. Arthur was beginning to fear that his perfect life was built on a foundation of lies. Penelope, ever observant, noticed the subtle shift in Arthur's demeanor. He was more distant, his eyes held a questioning glint, and he seemed to be watching her more closely. She knew she had to act quickly to regain control of the situation. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Penelope launched into a tale about a charity case she had been working on, a poor family struggling to make ends meet. She emphasized her compassion and generosity, subtly reminding Arthur of the virtuous woman he believed her to be. "I spent the entire afternoon with them, Arthur," she said, her voice filled with heartfelt concern. "They were so grateful for the help. It's moments like these that make all the parties and social events worthwhile, don't you think?" She watched him carefully as she spoke, gauging his reaction. He seemed to relax slightly, the suspicion in his eyes fading. She knew she had to keep reinforcing this image, playing the part of the devoted wife and philanthropist. Later, she accidentally left a stack of charity letters on his desk, further solidifying her fabricated narrative. She was a master of deception, and she wouldn't let a bounty hunter and a few nagging doubts ruin her carefully constructed world. The next train robbery was riskier than usual. The train was heavily guarded, and the night was illuminated by an almost full moon. Despite the increased danger, Penelope pressed on, driven by a desperate need to secure more funds. To ensure her escape route remained open if Arthur discovered the truth. As the rattlesnake gang swarmed the train, a young, wide-eyed passenger peered out from behind a seat. In the heat of the moment, As Penelope wrestled a guard for his rifle, her bandana slipped slightly, revealing a glimpse of her face. The passenger gasped, recognizing the familiar features beneath the mask. Penelope froze for a split second, her heart pounding in her chest. She quickly adjusted her bandana, hoping the passenger hadn't seen enough to identify her. But the damage was done. The witness had seen a glimpse of the truth, a crack in the carefully constructed facade. She finished the robbery, her mind racing, knowing that her double life was hanging by a thread. The gang escaped with the loot, but Penelope knew this time they had also left something behind, a potential witness who could expose her to the world. Arthur, fueled by his growing suspicions, became increasingly observant. He started following Penelope, discreetly tracking her movements. He noticed her frequent trips to the outskirts of town, her hushed conversations with shady characters in dimly lit saloons, and the way she seemed to tense up whenever a train whistle echoed through the valley. He visited the sheriff, ostensibly to discuss increasing security measures for the town, but subtly steered the conversation towards the recent train robberies. He carefully observed the sheriff's reactions as he mentioned the Viper, searching for any hint of suspicion or knowledge. He even started examining Penelope's belongings, searching for clues that would confirm his worst fears. He rifled through her jewelry box, noting the absence of the diamond earring Jebediah Stone had shown him. He scrutinized her riding clothes, searching for traces of gunpowder or dirt. Each piece of evidence, however small, added weight to his growing conviction. The woman he loved was not who he thought she was. The truth was slowly unraveling, and Arthur was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. Penelope's annual summer gala was the highlight of the social season. The wealthiest and most influential people from across the state gathered at the Graves mansion, dressed in their finest attire, eager to indulge in the lavish food, free-flowing drinks, and lively music. Arthur, however, had other plans. He used the party as an opportunity to discreetly gather information. He mingled with the guests, casually steering conversations towards Penelope's whereabouts on the nights of the train robberies. He asked seemingly innocent questions, carefully observing their reactions. "Penelope is such a tireless hostess," he remarked to Mrs. Abernathy, a notorious gossip. "I don't know how she manages to do it all. Where was she last Tuesday? Do you recall? I seem to have misplaced my calendar." He approached Judge Thompson, a close friend of the family, and inquired about Penelope's recent church donations. "She's always so generous," he said, his voice laced with feigned admiration. "I'm just curious, has she mentioned any specific projects she's been working on lately?" The responses he received were vague and unconvincing, further fueling his suspicions. The party, meant to celebrate Penelope's social standing, was slowly becoming an interrogation. Jebediah Stone had been watching the Graves mansion for weeks, patiently observing Penelope's comings and goings. He knew she was getting desperate, her movements becoming more erratic, her attempts to cover her tracks more frantic. He also knew that Arthur was getting closer to the truth, his growing suspicion a dangerous wild card in the situation. One evening, as Penelope rode out alone, Jebediah followed her. He tracked her to a secluded canyon, where she met with a group of her gang members. He watched as they argued, their voices hushed but intense. He could see the desperation in Penelope's eyes, the fear that her world was about to collapse. He decided it was time to act. He stepped out of the shadows, his rifle raised. "Penelope Graves," he called out, his voice echoing through the canyon. "Your time is up." Penelope whirled around, her face a mask of fury and fear. She drew her own weapon, her hand steady despite the circumstances. "Jebediah Stone," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "I should have known you'd be the one to find me." "It's over, Penelope," Jebediah said, his voice firm. "Come quietly, and maybe I can convince the judge to be lenient." Penelope laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Lenient? You think I'm going to beg for mercy? Never." She raised her gun, ready to fight to the end. Back at the mansion, Arthur had finally pieced together the last fragments of the puzzle. He found a hidden compartment in Penelope's dressing room, containing a black bandana, a small pistol, and a detailed map of the train routes between El Paso and Kansas. The evidence was irrefutable. His Penelope was the Viper. He felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. How could the woman he loved, the woman he thought he knew, be capable of such deceit? He grabbed his coat and stormed out of the house, determined to confront her. He knew she often rode out to the canyon at this time of day. As he approached the canyon, he heard the sound of gunfire. He urged his horse forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He arrived to find Jebediah Stone facing off against Penelope and her gang. He saw the hatred in Penelope's eyes, the ruthlessness of the Viper. He realized he didn't know this woman at all. But more than that, he saw the danger she was in, and he knew he had to do something, even if it meant betraying everything he believed in. "Stop!" Arthur shouted, his voice cutting through the tense silence. All eyes turned to him, surprised by his sudden appearance. "Penelope, what is the meaning of this?" Penelope lowered her gun slightly, a flicker of something akin to regret in her eyes. "Arthur," she said softly, her voice losing its harsh edge. "You shouldn't be here. I know everything, Penelope," Arthur said, his voice trembling with emotion. "The bandana, the map, the robberies. How could you?" Jebediah Stone stepped forward, his gun still trained on Penelope. "Step aside, Mr. Graves. This doesn't concern you." Penelope ignored him, her gaze fixed on Arthur. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she said, her voice filled with a strange mix of defiance and vulnerability. "I did what I had to do." "What you had to do?" Arthur exclaimed, his voice rising in anger. "You robbed trains, you terrorized innocent people. How can you justify that?" Penelope sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "It's not that simple, Arthur. You don't understand." She then launched into a story about her childhood, her family's poverty, and the injustices they had suffered at the hands of the wealthy elite. She explained that her banditry was a form of rebellion, a way to fight back against a system that had oppressed her family for generations. Jebediah Stone, tired of the talking, raised his rifle. "Enough. I'm taking her in." "No," Arthur shouted, stepping in front of Penelope. "You're not going to shoot her." "Get out of the way, Mr. Graves," Jebediah warned, his voice steely. "She's a dangerous criminal." "I know what she is," Arthur said, his voice resolute. "But I won't let you kill her." He then turned to Penelope, his eyes filled with a mixture of love, anger, and desperation. "Run, Penelope. Get out of here. I'll hold him off." Penelope stared at him in disbelief. "Arthur, you can't do that," she said, her voice filled with concern. "You'll get yourself killed. Just go," Arthur pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. He knew he was making a terrible decision, betraying his own sense of justice. But he couldn't bear the thought of seeing Penelope die. He loved her, despite everything she had done. He stepped in front of Jebediah, blocking his path, giving Penelope a chance to escape. The members of the Rattlesnake Gang, seeing their leader was about to get away, scattered and rode off into the canyon. The standoff had begun. The moment of truth had arrived. Would Arthur's sacrifice be enough? Penelope hesitated, torn between her desire to escape and her concern for Arthur. She couldn't leave him to face Jebediah alone. With a sigh, she made her decision. "I'm not leaving you, Arthur," she said, her voice filled with determination. She turned to face Jebediah, her gun raised once more. "Let him go, Stone. This is between you and me." Jebediah Stone hesitated, his eyes shifting between Penelope and Arthur. He knew he couldn't shoot Penelope with Arthur in the way. He lowered his rifle slightly. "All right, Mr. Graves, step aside. I don't want to hurt you." Arthur refused to move. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice unwavering. "Whatever happens to her, happens to me." Penelope knew she had to act quickly. She couldn't let Arthur sacrifice himself for her. She took a deep breath and made a desperate gamble. "Stone, I'll turn myself in," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But you have to promise me you'll let Arthur go. He had nothing to do with this." Jebediah considered her offer, weighing his options. He knew capturing the Viper was his priority, but he also didn't want to see an innocent man get hurt. "All right," he said finally. "I accept your terms." The showdown had come to an end, but at what cost? As Penelope was led away, she turned back to Arthur, her eyes filled with sadness. "I'm sorry, Arthur," she said softly. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Arthur watched her go, his heart heavy with grief and regret. He knew he had lost her, no matter what the future held. In the end, Penelope Graves was brought to trial. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was found guilty of train robbery and other crimes. However, due to Arthur's impassioned plea for leniency, recounting her difficult childhood and the injustices she had faced, the judge spared her from the gallows. Instead, she was sentenced to a long prison term. Arthur visited her every week, bringing her books and news from the outside world. Their conversations were often strained and awkward, but there was still a flicker of the love they once shared. Years later, Penelope was released from prison. She was a changed woman, humbled by her experiences and determined to make amends for her past. She used her knowledge of the criminal underworld to help the authorities track down other bandits, and she dedicated her life to helping the poor and oppressed. Arthur stood by her side, offering his unwavering support. Their marriage was forever changed, but their love endured, forged in the crucible of betrayal and sacrifice. The Viper was gone, but Penelope Graves had finally found redemption.